My pleasure to welcome you all and to introduce Helen to you. A few things about Helen. Just looking at the title of her presentation tonight, the first little part of this is really important actually, passion and persistence. Let me tell you about Helen as a professor in this faculty who demonstrates passion and persistence. Her career illustrates the ability to grab an idea and hang on to it and run with it over long periods of time. Because what she does is she thinks really carefully, really deeply, really thoughtfully about the ability to use research to have something to say that's based on evidence. Data drives the way that Helen thinks about what she's got to say and when she's got to say it. And so the notion of passion and persistence is actually a really good example of what it takes to be a thoughtful, rigorous and highly capable scholar. And that's what Helen is. That's why we're proud to have her in this faculty, and that's why I'm sure what she presents tonight will illustrate what it takes to be a serious academic and to be a professor in this faculty. Helen, it's a pleasure to have you with us. We really look forward to your presentation tonight. Welcome, and let's go. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the lovely introduction, and it's my pleasure to share with you some findings from my continuing longitudinal study in STEM passion and persistence tonight. First, I'd like to acknowledge country. Monash University's Australian campuses are proudly on Kulin land in Melbourne. I acknowledge the traditional owners of this land and recognise and pay my respects to elders past, present and future. STEM is a common, popular acronym for science, technology, engineering and mathematics. My work initially was focused on the mathematics part of STEM and more recently also on the science and mathematics parts of STEM. First of all, who is studying STEM and do we care? There have been two main arguments put forward as to why we should care. First in terms of economic drivers and second in terms of individuals' own career and life opportunities. Economic drivers, well, you can't not have heard these kinds of messages on the radio lately, frankly. So lots of messages coming from the Office of the Chief Scientist, from the department. Here are just some example quotes. Maths and science drive data analysis, underpinning every sector of enterprise. For Australia to succeed, we only have less than half the number of Australian university students graduating with maths and stats qualifications compared with the OECD average. STEM fields critical engines of innovation and growth, accounting for more than 50% of the nation's sustained economic growth. So we hear a lot about these economic drivers, but in terms of personal affordances, maths has been found, and I will be sharing findings about this, to act as a critical filter which can limit individuals' future participation and opportunities in many fields of high status and high salary education and occupation. It's also a gendered issue. We need to worry about this because women are more likely than men to end up as financially responsible for other dependents, but also for their own future and career opportunities. This is often referred to as the STEM pipeline, which I'm sure you've heard. The idea that the flow slows to a trickle, especially at different transition points where individuals leak out of the STEM pipeline, and some groups, like girls and women, leak more than others. It's not a metaphor that I particularly like, because I think that it conveys that individuals are uncritically just falling out of the STEM pipeline, rather than perhaps making thoughtful and agentic informed decisions as to why they might wish to pursue other pathways and opportunities, which I'll have a lot more to say about. Well, approximately 3/4 of young Australians remain and undertake Year 12 in Australia. So this is who is even available to be in the STEM pipeline. First, a national snapshot of maths participation over time, and then we'll look at the different sciences. So the highest bar here represents fundamental or basic lowest levels of mathematics. from 1995 to 2011, you can see that these are the most commonly undertaken by the largest proportion of students at Year 12, and that proportion is increasing over time. Whereas the middle fluorescent green bar, that's intermediate levels of maths, and the dark green bar at the bottom is advanced levels of mathematics. You can see that these are both lower and declining over time. Sciences, well, we've got different kinds of sciences, so let's talk about them a little bit separately. Between 1992 and 2009, the percentage of Year 12 students taking sciences fell by 32% in biology, 23% in chemistry, 31% in physics. And here's what the declines look like actually over a longer period. It's starting in 1976 on the left and going up to 2007. So you can see that the rank ordering remains the same. So the proportion of students undertaking biology remains higher than any other science, but we've got declines across all of those. Psychology is a growing area, but basically declines. And this is a gendered issue, as I'd already foreshadowed, but also intersects with issues of socioeconomic status and cultural background. So we see that in advanced maths, physics and chemistry, we've got more concentrations of boys, students who aspire to higher education, students who have had higher prior achievement, students from higher SES backgrounds, and Asian students more than any other cultural group, even after taking those other influential effects into account. Whereas we have girls and lower prior achievers and lower SES students concentrated in arts and home sciences, boys, lower prior achievers and lower SES students concentrated in technical and computer studies. This is already making the point that while it's convenient to collectively refer to STEM, that actually there's different patterns in the different domains of STEM. So we've got technology and computer studies off on the right there, but maths, physics, chemistry on the left. So we need to be careful what STEM domain that we're talking about when we talk about STEM. The next sort of transition point in the pipeline after school, so this is university commencement fields of study. So that giant slice on the left is non-science, non-STEM proportion of students who commence university. And you can see that health on the bottom right is accounts for the largest proportion of people commencing in STEM fields. What about over time? Anyone want to have a guess what that top growing line is? This is people who are commencing different fields in university from 2002 to 2010. So big growth area, one of the STEM domains. Psychology. I can't hear you. Who said health? It's health. Psychology, well, that's got subsumed in with something. I reckon psychology is part of health. Natural and physical sciences have had a little upturn since 2008, but fairly flat. Engineering's pretty flat. IT's sort of dropped off a bit. If we'd started pre-2000, we would have seen IT coming up, but since then it's come down a little. So this is 2002 to 2010, the number of students commencing in different fields. And keep in mind as well that more students are attending university. So number is not necessarily the most informative thing here. Proportions are probably more useful. Well, that's commencement. What about completion rates? Well, for health and natural physical sciences, between 73 to 69% of students complete those degrees who start them. Engineering, only 58% of students who commence those degrees finish them. Agriculture and environment, 48 to 60%, and only half in IT complete what they commence in university. Who's teaching these people? So this is a DES 2006 audit of final year teacher education students. So we assume they're going to graduate. And you can see the pulled out slices for maths, science and technology. Those are the proportions who are qualifying to teach in those domains. Unfortunately, it's not enough. The Staff in Australia's School Survey, the first one in 2007, and then I'll show you the change by the second survey. These bars show the percentage of teachers who are teaching in each STEM field and each grade levels there, who do have training in that teaching method. So you can see that in grades 7 to 10, so that's the very bottom bar, the third bottom bar, and the light blue bar halfway through, you can see that in grades 7 to 10, which are the sort of foundation years when knowledge and engagement is being set, that we have a pretty low proportion of teachers who are teaching those domains with the relevant qualifications. So this is a worry. Then in the next survey in 2010, we see that things actually got worse for senior chemistry and physics. There were drops in the proportions of qualified teachers teaching those subjects. Stayed the same for maths, and things improved a bit for IT. Well, this is a problem. I'm sure that everyone's heard of John Hattie's Visible Learning book, where he found that teachers exert by far the most powerful effect size and influences on students' achievement outcomes. Well, they're also important for students' engagement, not just for their achievement. So inspired teaching is undoubtedly the key to the quality of our system. Teachers and schools exert a substantial influence on their students. I'll be sharing with you some of my data which unpack these, but it's certainly the case and certainly a concern. So we need to be worried not just about the STEM pipeline, but also about the STEM teaching supply pipeline. The different kinds of factors at the individual student level, the institutional level, and the structural level, which are posited to impact on leaks out of the STEM pipeline, have primarily been studied within the Eccles et al. Expectancy value theoretical framework. So here it is, and it's always fun to put this up in classes and ask students to try and think of something that's not there. Because even if you think of something that's not explicitly there, I bet it belongs up under the top left cultural milieu box. So this is intended, Jacqueline Eccles designed this and stated that it's intended to be a kind of roadmap for the organisation of the different influential pieces for researchers to zoom in and study different parts of the model. So in red, in the middle red, are the outcomes, so achievement, participation choices, engagement, persistence. So that's what we're trying to predict in STEM. And the most proximal predictors up the top are ability beliefs, self-concepts, expectancy that you can succeed, you can do it. So that's the I think I can box up the top right. And down the bottom right are the task values. So this is whether you care, so whether it's important to you at all. So Eccles says that it's not enough to just think that you can do something, you also have to want to do it in order to decide to pursue it. And there's been a lot of research within this model which supports those contentions. So there are 4 different types of task values. The first is intrinsic value, also called interest or enjoyment value. The second is attainment value, which refers to the personal importance of succeeding. So it's important for me to do well in maths, science, reading, whatever that you're studying. Utility value, also sometimes called importance value, is about how useful the subject is regarded as being just in its own right by the student. And the last value is the one that's been really under-researched that I've been working in. This is the negative value of costs that will push you away. So the first 3 kinds of values should attract you towards. So if you're interested, you enjoy it, you care about doing well in it, you think it's useful and worthwhile, these should all attract you to participate in STEM or any other domain that we were researching. Whereas different kinds of costs, such as effort cost, financial cost, emotional exhaustion cost, different kinds of costs should push you away. So I'm going to be concentrating in the red part of the model tonight. I'm going to be sharing with you findings from 2 longitudinal studies that I've been conducting. First of all, this one is 1,323 Australian adolescents that I followed in the mid-90s from grade 7 through to grade 11. I just couldn't get to grade 12, I really tried. busy year. And I've been engaged in following them up 17 years later. So I can actually look at long-term outcomes of how their attitudes during secondary school mattered. And then later I'll be sharing with you information from a new contemporary study. Those students have just finished high school now. So they've been tracked from grade 10 through to post-school to see how things have changed these days, because the mid-90s was a while ago now. Doesn't feel it, but it was. Okay, so I say Australian sample. Actually, they're from 3 co-educational upper middle class government schools in metropolitan Sydney that were matched for socioeconomic status by the ABS. What I've shown here, the New South Wales maths curriculum structure for the HSC at the time, there were 5 levels of mathematics. Maths in practice was the lowest level, then maths in society, 2 units, 3 units, and the most advanced 4 units maths. And these are the students that I followed from 7A is referring to the start of grade 7, 7B the end of grade 7. Being the first year after the transition to secondary school, I wanted to make sure that I captured the year of year 7. Then the middle of year 8, the start of year 9, start of year 10 and start of year 11 with different bars. Each pair is boys and girls. And we've got in each bar the proportion of boys or girls at each grade level who are undertaking each of those levels of mathematics, from the easiest levels at the bottom of the bars up to the most advanced levels at the top of the bars. So what you can see here is that down the bottom we have more colouring for the girls, and up the top we have more colouring for the boys. So this is saying that the boys aspired, because they don't choose their actual HSC mathematics level until grade 11, the boys are aspiring and actually undertake at year 11 the more advanced levels of mathematics, and vice versa for the girls. So this is important for a couple of reasons. First, that the aspirations are really predicting the actual choices, and that they're pretty stable and in place from the start of secondary school. And secondly, the very robust gender difference over that time. What about their planned occupations? So I asked this as an open-ended question. What job would you like to have when you grow up, I think it was. And these were coded using the US Department of Labor occupational network classification system, which codes careers into how maths related they are, from none, not at all mathematics related, up to high mathematical knowledge and skills required in the job. So all the careers were coded according to that, and basically this graph looks very like the other graph. So we see down the bottom of the bars we've got more girls than boys aspiring to careers which are not at all maths related, and up the top of the bars we've got higher proportions of boys who are aspiring to highly maths related careers. And because I've now been following them up, I'm able to determine the extent to which those aspirations in fact predict the careers that they've ended up in. Well, so it is a gendered issue. Why would girls have lower maths aspirations? These data reflect those at the national level and resonate with statistics from other countries. In the United States, the gender gap in maths participation has pretty much closed, largely because of inducements and levers that mean that if students opt out, that they're really cutting themselves out of university studies, for example. So it's become, while not entirely compulsory, there's a lot of levers to keep people in studying mathematics. Does that translate into more mathematics post-school? I have the data for that as well, which I'll share with you. It's not due to achievement differences. So we consistently find non-significant gender differences in mathematical achievement, so we need other explanations. In the expectancy value framework, expectancies or self-concepts and task values are the main influences. So let's look at the extent to which they can explain differences in aspired maths and actual maths participation over and above taking into account students' mathematical achievement levels. So these kinds of factors are measured by self-report surveys where students respond to multiple questions that they rate from 1 to 7, not at all to very. So an example question for self-concept: compared with other students in your class, how talented do you consider yourself to be at maths? For intrinsic value, how much do you like maths compared to your other subjects at school? Utility value, how useful do you think mathematical skills are in the workplace? So we've got these sorts of questions, multiple questions for each factor. And this model is looking at, if I mouse over this, is it showing up there? Yes, good. So background maths achievement at grade 9, and then different attitudes about mathematics at grade 10. So self-concepts, different kinds of values, also how difficult they think mathematics is, then which maths level they actually end up taking, and the maths relatedness of their career plans. So first, because of the way that I've coded gender, any positive numbers, the numbers are telling us about girls. So this is saying that girls consider maths to be more difficult than boys. The possible range of these numbers is from 0 to 1, or 0 to -1. So that's not a super strong effect, but it's significant and it's there. Girls are less interested in maths. They think they are less good at maths. Note there's no arrow from gender to achievement because it's not significant. So they think they're less good at maths despite same achievement level. Higher achievers are more interested, think that they're better, well, you'd hope so, but actually it's not that strong. So there's a lot intervening between how students are achieving and what they think of their abilities. You might expect that to be a higher number. Higher achievers do take more advanced maths in grade 11. Students who think maths is more difficult think it's less useful. This is a strong effect. They're less interested if they think it's more difficult. Another strong effect, they think they're less capable if they think it's more difficult. Students who are more interested also do more advanced maths. Students who think they're more capable do more advanced maths. Pretty weak effect. And students who take more advanced maths, their aspired careers are more mathematics related. Although it's not entirely clear to me that the direction of the arrow should just be unidirectional there. This is what I was saying earlier about I don't think students are just falling out of the maths pipeline. It's very possible that students are looking ahead to the kinds of careers that involve intensive and advanced maths and the kinds of workplace conditions and making very deliberate, informed choices away from those. Okay, there was no path from the utility value to any outcomes. However, there was an interesting interaction effect. What this shows, where I've circled in the middle there, so along the bottom we've got people who thought maths was low usefulness through to high usefulness, and up the side we've got how maths related their aspired careers were. So what's going on in the middle there with gender is it's saying that for boys who think maths is moderately useful, they're just as likely as boys who think maths is highly useful to aspire to highly maths-related careers. Whereas for girls, unless they think maths is highly useful, they are not likely to aspire to highly maths-related careers. In fact, girls who think maths is moderately useful are as likely as girls who think maths is low usefulness to undertake low maths-related careers. So this makes the point that unless girls think that maths is worthwhile and useful and important, socially useful, that they're unlikely to aspire to those kinds of careers. This suggests many levers for action, such as making connections between different types of maths-related careers and their social uses and values. Jacqueline Eccles and I collected up a lot of information for our 2008 book, looking at the continuing pressing issue of gendered educational and occupational outcomes, which continues to be an issue today. I mentioned that I had some US data. Well, actually, Jacqueline Eccles has US data. and also together with colleagues from Ontario in Canada here, we were interested across these three culturally similar settings, which however differ in interesting ways in the maths curriculum and degree of choice that's available, to see which kinds of motivations would kick in when there's more versus less choice. So the kinds of things that we were interested to look at are the leaky pipeline, if it might operate differently. So in the US, where the students are kind of constrained to stay participating in mathematics, how might that translate into maths-related career plans? Are they going to be more likely, or will it not translate? Maths as a critical filter. Well, no, let me go through the points. So how relevant is degree of choice and early specialisation across cultural settings? And is it possible that girls choose careers that are equally prestigious but less maths related, in which case maybe we shouldn't be so worried about their personal life opportunities? Do mathematical self-concepts and values have relevance to aspired career prestige and planned highest level of education? So the critical filter idea, is it going to delimit access to sort of high status outcomes? And for girls who do aspire to mathematical careers, are they of equal or lower status to the boys that are aspiring to maths related careers? Or in other words, does the leaky pipeline have a glass ceiling, to mix my metaphors? So this was 3 opportune samples, colleagues who had similar designs, similar time points, similar measures, to be able to look at these questions together. So the Australian data, it's my same Sydney Metropolitan Schools data that I introduced earlier. The measures, very slight wording differences, but we were all using the expectancy value framework to measure self-concepts and values. And at time 1, then at time 2, at the end of high school, we had maths course taking. We also had the highest aspired education level people planned, and their aspired career was coded in the same way that I mentioned before, using ONET for maths relatedness, and there's also an ONET coding available for prestige. So it was coded in 2 different ways off their open responses. And multi-group structural equation models tested for gendered patterns and gender differences. So my Australian sample, anyone from New South Wales here? 3 of us. While the middle course, 2 units, was prerequisite to certain university degrees, none required 4-unit maths, or indeed the 3-unit maths. So there's more choice going on in the Australian setting. So it's not going to be a requirement for future plans that they undertake the very highest level of mathematics. Whereas in both North American settings, less difficult maths could satisfy high school graduation, but not university admission. So there's a bit more constraint here. In the US sample from Michigan, most universities require Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, or trig calculus, so there's less room for choice. That's to even attend university, regardless of what you're studying. In the Canadian Ontario sample at the time, students had to do 6 advanced courses in senior high. To enter university, 1 had to be grade 11 maths. To enter scientific degrees, another had to be grade 12 maths. So this one's sort of got an in-between level of choice. So would gender differences be more pronounced when there's a real option to opt out? Would interest play a greater role when there's more choice? Would importance value or utility attainment value be more relevant for girls along that interaction finding that I had, that unless girls think that maths is highly useful, they're less likely to aspire to highly maths related careers? And also, would the maths motivations relate to aspired career prestige in tune with the critical filter, not just to maths relatedness? And would we see a continuing or a leaky pipeline between maths course taking in high school and maths related career plans? And what about this leaky pipeline glass ceiling? Well, gender differences were in stereotypic directions where they occurred, so favouring boys, and were more pronounced in the Australian sample. So we thought that maybe the comparative testing regime in North America focuses students' attention more on their abilities, whereas the degree of choice in the New South Wales setting would focus students' attention on what they're interested in, if they've got more choice about it. These days, I think we have a comparative testing regime in Australia too, but at the time this was definitely not so much the case. It seems that the earlier specialisation afforded in the New South Wales setting at the time amplified gender differences in maths participation with flow-on effects to maths-related career choices. So giving students more choice and more room to opt out, they opt out, and girls opt out more than boys. The different structures appeared to activate different choice processes, as we had hypothesised. So the self-concepts, or ability expectancy beliefs, were the most important predictor in both North American samples. So if students thought they were good at it, they did it, more of it. Whereas interest value was the primary predictor in the Australian setting. Makes sense, if you've got choice, do what you like. Importance value did play a greater role for girls, so there's really important implications here, and we continue to find this in contemporary data. It's very important to make links to the social uses and purposes of mathematics and how different careers do involve mathematics in preparation or daily practice. Adolescents tend to have very inaccurate ideas of what careers involve mathematics, so making that explicit can be very helpful. And mathematics motivations did impact the non-mathematical measures of highest level of aspired education and aspired career prestige. So this says that mathematics is acting as a critical filter, not just to maths-related careers, but also to high prestige careers and to aspired highest level of education. We had a broken pipeline in the US setting. This is kind of interesting. So it seems that keeping the students in more mathematics through to the end of secondary school doesn't translate into greater participation in terms of their plans post-secondary school. So it's not the silver bullet. We're hearing a lot of publicity now about we need to just, keep students in mathematics longer. Well, maybe we do, but it's not the silver bullet to keep them in the pipeline post-school. And it's often assumed that, maths-related careers are more prestigious careers without directly testing. Well, they were moderately related, so it is indeed the case. But these are all aspirations. What about actual outcomes? So far, despite the fact that the internet did not exist back in the mid-90s and there was no Facebook, 643 of the original 1,323 have been followed up to discover their actual occupational outcomes. So on the left, we've got their careers coded using the ONET from careers involving no maths through to high maths and the numbers of students in each group. And then 17 years later, their actual careers were coded in the same way. And the relationship for boys was 0.20. This can go from 0 to 1. But hey, it's over a 17-year window. And for girls, 0.21. So aspirations indeed predicted actual career maths relatedness. These arrows are the stability paths. These are the numbers of students who stayed in the same group over that time. And then these other numbers are showing substantial numbers that went off diagonal ways. So a bunch of the students who had aspired to a career that wasn't at all maths related did end up in low and mid maths related careers. Who aspired to low ended up in mid. Mid went sort of all over the place. And high tended to drop to mid. And these dashed paths show everyone else, but smaller numbers that moved other pathways. So the aspirations predict even really long-term career outcomes in terms of maths relatedness. And their motivations mattered, even 17 years later. So these were the ones that were predictive, how difficult they found maths, how interested they were, and their self-concept of their ability in maths at the end of, in grade 11, almost the end of high school. The green bars for boys show that boys who were more interested and boys who thought that they were more able at maths were the ones who ended up in more maths-related careers. The same was also true for girls who thought they were more able. But we had a pull away factor that was important for girls. Girls who had found maths difficult were less likely to end up in maths related careers. So motivations matter. We need to worry about what students' attitudes are. So if self-concepts and values are so important, we'd better worry about how they develop through secondary school and earlier. So this line of work initially focused on the transition to secondary school and all the disruption and negative changes in motivations that have been identified on transition to secondary school. Earlier explanations related to the timing of puberty and a time of adolescent storm and stress, but those explanations were challenged by Eccles and her colleagues, who documented differences in the environment pre and post transition that account for declining student motivations, such as disruptions to peer networks, an increase in normative assessment where suddenly you're being really compared with how everyone else achieves, multiple teachers throughout the day for all different subjects, and greater curricular differentiation, and other factors as well. But longer term longitudinal studies show that this may be part of a continuing pattern through school and that students don't recover post-transition. So I looked at I conducted latent growth curve modelling to look at the trajectories of different maths attitudes with the earlier data set that I mentioned. This is those same time points, the start to end of grade 7, mid grade 8, start of grades 9, 10, 11. And boys are the dashed line and girls are the solid line. Those little widgets on the lines are 95% confidence intervals. Anytime that those don't overlap, none of these overlap, it's saying that the estimates are significantly different for boys and girls. So what we see is a slight decline in self-concepts for maths for both boys and girls through secondary school, and a stable magnitude of gender gap. So the students have commenced secondary school with that gender gap in self-concept already in place, and it doesn't shift. I also, in this study, everything that I collected about maths, I also collected about English, which is not the focus of today, but I just want to show you this one English graph to make the point that I also gave them ACER standardised achievement assessments at each time point in each of maths and English. In maths, there was no gender difference at any time point in mathematical achievement. In English, there was, favouring girls. Now you can see that all the confidence intervals overlap here, which says that actually there's no difference in boys and girls' self-concept for English. There's a slight decline for them both, despite the fact that girls had higher achievement. So there's kind of the same effect going on. So for maths, although the girls are achieving similarly to the boys, they think that they are less able. For English, although the girls are achieving higher than the boys, they think they are equally able. So the boys definitely have a confidence boost in both domains, even in English, a very female-typed domain. Okay, what about interest value? We again see declines and parallel, same robust magnitude of gender gap all the way through, but not linear. So interest losses are highest early in secondary school. So that would be a place to intervene. Utility value, there's only one line here because there were no significant gender differences, so that one trajectory describes boys and girls, and here it's the reverse. It's in upper secondary school that utility value losses are greatest, probably when they're making decisions about what's worthwhile and important to them and choosing their secondary school, upper secondary school subjects and thinking about career choice. So greater realism might explain declines with increased social comparisons and increased normative assessment. But what about the gender differences? The stable magnitudes imply that they're in place early on and continue the same, and other long-term longitudinal studies have found the same. And in the United States, Jacobs, Eccles and colleagues found gender differences in self-concepts and interest in mathematics as early as grade 2. So differences in self-concepts and values need to be addressed from childhood, which is not to say that there's nothing that we can do in secondary school, but if we want to understand the origins, we need to go back very young indeed. The achievement data shows, maybe this illusory glow or confidence boost across domains for boys, I conducted an intensive qualitative phase with 120 of these students in grade 9, where I discovered the interesting finding that same stimuli could lead to opposite interpretations by underestimating girls and overestimating boys, particularly interpretations of encouragement from significant others. The underestimating girls tended to think that this was indicative of low ability because they needed encouragement, whereas the boys took it at very face value and thought that the teacher was encouraging them because they were capable and deserved it. In a new contemporary longitudinal study, I've been focusing on maths and sciences and probing the sources of the maths and science motivations. This is 1,172 students across 9 Melbourne and Sydney schools. And here I tried to have a mix of not just government, but also Catholic and independent schools, co-educational and single sex, and there's a couple of selective schools in there as well. The first striking thing, I think, is the high proportions of students undertaking no science in Year 12. And although maths looks quite nice and high there, that's any maths, so it includes the most basic levels of maths as well. In terms of their career plans, boys aspired to more maths-related careers than girls, and both boys and girls had a drop-off in those aspirations between grade 10 and grade 12. There was the same sort of drop-off from grade 10 to grade 12 for science-related careers, but no gender difference. So what careers do they want to do? Well, the most popular careers for boys were technology, entrepreneurship and health, whereas for girls it was health, creative arts, teaching and then entrepreneurship. And careers that were significantly more attractive for boys were maths, technology, entrepreneurship and trades. Careers more attractive for girls were creative arts and teaching. It's probably more important to consider profiles of motivations rather than individual motivations just predicting each on their own, because of course we hold in our heads a set of attitudes all at the same time when we're making decisions. So I've been investigating costs as well as the expectancies and values that I looked at earlier. So here's the expectancies and values, but the kinds of costs I've been looking at are effort cost, psychological cost and social cost, to see whether these kinds of things are going to pull people away, and also potential consequences for their own personal well-being, such as stress and anxiety and depression. So gender differences continue alive and well in contemporary data, and girls are higher on the costs. But I was interested in these profiles. So there were 3 profiles, 3 clusters of students in science. The nice calm blue and green colours are the positive motivations, and the reds and orange danger colours, they're the negative costs. So the first cluster was high on the positives, low on the negatives. The next was high on both, and the third was lower on the positives and higher on the negatives. The same 3 clusters were identified also in maths, as well as a 4th cluster that was kind of, moderate on both, kind of undifferentiated. And because of what I'm going to show you about the consequences from these profiles, I named them, the first one, positively engaged, the next one, struggling ambitious. What's in a name, right? Everything. The third one, disengaged, and the 4th one, which was only in maths, indifferent. Okay, why did I do that and how do they matter? The positively engaged and the struggling ambitious had a similar reported history of results, equally high maths, science aspired careers and aimed marks. The only difference between them was that the high costs perceived by the struggling ambitious associated with debilitated psychological well-being in terms of depression, anxiety and stress. And if I hadn't measured the costs, I wouldn't actually see any difference show up between these groups. They're achieving equally well, they're equally positively motivated, they're aspiring similarly. The difference is the high perceived costs and the poor well-being. The disengaged had similarly good psychological health to the positively engaged. What differentiated this group was their low maths, science, career aspirations, aim marks and history of results. So the low expectancies and values held by the disengaged associated with lowered achievement, career striving, but the perceived low costs bolster their well-being. The indifferent group in maths only had moderately depressed wellbeing, they're rather indifferent, moderately aimed marks and history of results and rather low maths career aspirations, which appears to show that even moderate perceived costs exert negative effects on achievement, striving and psychological health. It's useful, I think, to think of these four groups as located along two dimensions of psychological wellbeing and achievement striving. So there's our high group, low, high wellbeing but low achievement striving, and low wellbeing but high achievement striving. So, you know, we need to worry about the psychological wellbeing of this poor, struggling, ambitious group. And it's not enough to just be promoting positive self-concepts and values. We also need to be worrying about protecting against costs. Is it the same students in maths and science who are in the same clusters? Well, although there's a statistically significant association there, so there's a tendency for it to be the same students that are in the same types, so there might be some sort of character, you know, dispositional base. The red numbers show sizable numbers that are off diagonals. I think this is a good message. I think this says that there are levers in the curriculum and what happens in the learning environments of the classrooms that we can shift people's motivations and profiles. There's something we can do about it. This is who adolescents are talking about in their careers. Highest for mothers and friends, and girls significantly higher on both of those. Rather low for teachers and career counsellors, so there is room for more conversations and more influence to occur. I do think there's a gender problem. Those bars that I didn't show you show that the same career motivators are equally important for girls and boys, including salary, by the way, and a swag of career motivations that they don't differ on, which clearly signals that girls do not prefer lower salary or lower status careers. So if they're choosing less STEM-related careers, despite similar motivations, for reasons such as higher costs, then I think we need to be worried. And it's a very robust finding that girls and women are more interested in these social occupations that allow them to socially contribute and help others. Well, the STEM teaching supply pipeline, there's an open STEM avenue. There's a lot that educators can do. The kinds of learning environments that teachers create appear to act as a process mechanism that convey teachers' expectations for what students can achieve, as well as students' values about mathematics or science, to students for their own self-concepts and values, and thereby impacting their maths-related career intentions. Similar patterns for science. What is a performance versus a mastery structure? These are the learning environments that are most commonly emphasised. A performance structure is one which emphasises competition and results. So these kinds of teachers will praise high achievement, maybe give awards and prizes, maybe say, you know, who came lowest in the class. Teachers who create a mastery learning environment are focused on self-improvement and understanding rather than how you compare relative to others. These red paths through here show that girls are perceiving teachers to think that they're less capable at maths, and this has flow-on effects for their own self-concepts and expectancies, as well as the extent to which they perceive a mastery environment. Mastery environment is really important for their self-concepts and their values, which thereby impact their career intentions. Fortunately, mastery climates, which are the blue bars, are rated higher than performance environments in all the cohorts that were involved in this study. These are just the kinds of things that characterise mastery versus performance environments. So, this has been rather a snapshot of just what I think some of the highlights are, rather than trying to be an exhaustive account of years and years of data collection. Where are we? The STEM shortage is, especially in advanced maths and physical sciences, more pronounced in contemporary data. We need to continue to examine the different elements of STEM. It's convenient to talk about it collectively, but there are different processes and patterns in the different domains of STEM. Teachers who are asked to teach OOF is out of field in STEM, this is likely to affect student learning and engagement. We have more women teachers but fewer women in STEM, so it's a bit of a sort of double bind problem. We need to be worried about this STEM teaching supply pipeline. Students, especially girls, are opting out of advanced maths and sciences when they perceive a real choice. This matters. Advanced maths preparation does act as a critical filter, not just on pathways to maths careers, but also to prestigious careers. Expectancies and values impact STEM studies and career aspirations. Values play a greater role when there's more choice. We need to be careful in thinking about how much choice we offer. Importance value really matters for girls. We need to be making those explicit connections between the social uses and purposes of sciences and mathematics in different careers. And I already mentioned that maths motivations impact the prestige dimension of career plans. Self-concepts and values decline throughout secondary schooling with a robust gender gap. Girls perceive lower talents than their achievements warrant. We need to consider the different interpretations that girls might be making than boys of socialisers' messages and think about best ways to convey beliefs about students and beliefs about STEM. Costs are important to consider as well. Costs impact wellbeing, even for students with high expectancies and values, achievements and aspirations. Aspirations modestly predict actual STEM-related careers. We need more long-term longitudinal studies, and we need to contrast more different settings as natural experiments, particularly settings where there is high participation in STEM and where girls and women participate to a similar degree to men, to be able to learn more from those settings. None of this work would be possible without the many participating schools and students for whose participation I am incredibly grateful, and thank you.